When Reddit tells you to make a YouTube video, you make a YouTube video, even if you have no idea what you're doing and it takes you over a year to figure it out. In any case, you might remember a little known anime that aired back in 2019 called Demon Slayer. I was a little bit late to jump onto the hype train for this one, but eventually I joined with everybody else. Because I was able to binge watch a lot of the episodes, I came to realize something. A lot of the episode title cards had different designs, and all the designs had traditional patterns and symbols that meant something, especially in relation to their respective episodes. So I decided to share my knowledge with the world, and here we are. I hope you guys enjoy, and I hope you guys learned something. Let's get on with the show. Episode 1, Cruelty. Our first title card features a star-like pattern known in Japanese as Assanoja, which is supposed to represent hemp leaves. This is the same pattern on Nezuko's kimono, and one we'll be seeing repeatedly in future episode title cards. Considering Nezuko's importance to the story, it's not at all surprising to see it that often. Assanoja was and still is a popular pattern to place on kimono, as hemp is known to be tough and quick-growing. As a result, it used to be put on children's kimono in the hopes of bestowing its wearers good health and fast growth. This makes sense in Nezuko's case, as she's still quite young and still growing. Episode 2, Trainer Sakonji Urokodaki. We have another pattern found on a character's clothing, but this time we're looking at clouds, or kumo in Japanese. This pattern can be found on the haori of Urokodaki and later Tanjiro. To be honest, I couldn't find much about the symbolism of clouds in Japanese culture, except that they're associated with the heavens. However, given that Urokodaki teaches the breath of water swordsmanship style, I imagine the clouds here represent the water cycle. This is further reinforced by the haori's brilliant blue color, matching the water seen in Tanjiro's attacks. Episode 3, Sabito and Makomo. This episode, we see stalks of green bamboo, or take in Japanese. Bamboo is a common motif in Japanese art, and for good reason. It is tough and stays green even in difficult growing conditions, so it represents strength, growth, and resilience. Bamboo also has the ability to bend, so it represents flexibility as well. This is representative of Tanjiro, who perseveres through his training from hell this episode. Episode 4, Final Selection. We have a double motif title card this time, and these are two of the most important symbols in the series so far. The first symbol is Wisteria, which is a reference to the demon warning capabilities of the flowers in the series, as well as the presence of Wisteria at the meeting grounds for the final selection this episode. Wisteria in real life is a hardy vine that grows vigorously. According to Wikipedia, Wisteria can become immensely strong, with wrist-thick trunks and stems. These can collapse latticework, crush thin wooden posts, and even strangle large trees. Wisteria allowed to grow on houses can cause damage to gutters, downspouts, and similar structures. Pretty cool if you ask me. Wisteria is usually purple, and purple dye for textiles used to be incredibly difficult to produce before modern dye production became common in the early 20th century. So, back in the day, purple kimono were primarily reserved for the nobility. Consequently, I'm not surprised that those in charge of the Demon Slayers wear purple. It gives them a very noble and wealthy sort of image. The second motif we see here is gently flowing water, which is obviously a nod to Tanjiro's swordsmanship style. Water can be represented in many forms, for example, the gently flowing type like you see here, or more aggressive, crashing waves. But in general, water represents adaptability and change. Episode 5, My Own Steel. We have, again, Assanoja, or hemp leaf. We covered this in episode 1, so I won't go over it again, but I thought I'd put this here just for completion's sake. Episode 6, Swordsman accompanying a demon. We have a water design repeated this episode, so we won't go over it again. Moving on. Episode 7, Kibutsuji Muzon. This is the first episode title card where we have no motif at all. Notably, every episode with significant importance to the plot lacks a motif entirely, and this episode is no exception. In this episode, Tanjiro has his first encounter with Muzon, and the black and red gradient here represents Muzon perfectly, giving us a very dark and foreboding feeling. Episode 8, The Smell of Enchanting Blood. This episode, we have a repeating floral design known as karabana, or imaginary flowers. These are so named because they don't represent any particular flower, and as a result, they don't really have any specific meaning behind them. They're just meant to be pretty. However, this design likely alludes to Tamayo, who is introduced this episode. She wears flowers on her kimono, and her first attack involves a vibrant array of flowers. Episode 9, Temari Demon and Arrow Demon. We have two motifs here representing the two demons our heroes face this episode. The first motif is Temari balls, which obviously represent Susamaru, who uses Temari as her weapons. For those of you who may not know, Temari are handballs intricately decorated with colored threads to form geometric shapes. It is considered an art form, and traditionally, Temari were made by mothers to give to their children. To me, this makes Susamaru that much more of a tragic character. Despite all the horrible things she's done, it points to the fact that her true form is only that of a child. The second motif is more subtle, unless you happen to be familiar with Japanese patterns and symbols. The chevron-like pattern in the background is a traditional pattern called Yabane, and represents the fletching of an arrow, like the ones you would use in archery. This is a reference to Yaiba, who uses a different type of arrow as his weapon. Fun fact, Yabane was a popular pattern to put on kimono in the Taisho era, the time period Demon Slayer takes place in, and it was especially popular for kimono for schoolgirls before the sailor outfit became more common. Episode 10, Together Forever. Another double motif title card here, but this time representing our two main protagonists. We've covered the Assanoja pattern before and its association with Nezuko, but this is the first time we've seen the checkered pattern found on Tanjiro's Haori. This pattern is known as Ichimatsu, and was named after a famous kabuki actor named Ichimatsu Sadogawa, who liked to wear this pattern and became known for it. Otherwise, as far as I know, it doesn't really have any meaning behind it. Episode 11, Tsuzumi Mansion. The pattern we see here are repeating Tsuzumi, a type of traditional Japanese hand drum. These drums are hourglass shaped and feature chords that can be tightened or loosened to change the drum's pitch. They come in different sizes and create a very uniquely Japanese sound. You can search for some performances on YouTube if you like, but I guarantee you've heard the sound before, even if you didn't know what it was. These obviously represent Kyogai, who uses these drums as weapons. As far as I know, though, they don't really symbolize anything in particular. Episode 13, Something More Important Than Life. Yet again, we have our Assanoja pattern. I told you we'd see it multiple times. Since we covered it before, let's keep going. Episode 14, The House with the Wisteria Crest. We touched on Wisteria back in episode 4, but let's talk about the Wisteria Crest this time. Although not the exact same, the Wisteria crest in Demon Slayer is very similar to the crest of the Fujiwara clan. For those of you who might need to brush up on your Japanese history, the Fujiwara clan was one of the most, if not the most, influential families in all of Japan, and were especially prominent during the Heian era. The Fujiwara men were usually appointed to high-ranking positions in court, while the women would often be married off to high-ranking nobles, including some of the emperors themselves. As a result, they had tremendous influence over successive emperors, to the point where some were puppet emperors under the Fujiwara clan's direction. Their influence was so great that many Japanese family names have the kanji for Wisteria in them, including mine. Now that you know all of this, it makes sense that the head of the Demon Slayers has a Wisteria family crest, especially given the protective qualities of Wisteria in this series. As for the repeating background, I'm less sure what that is. It could be an abstract floral pattern, but it could also be stylized persimmons. If we go with the persimmon theory, it does make sense in the context of this episode. I couldn't find much about the symbolism of persimmons in Japan, but in China, they're symbols of good luck and long life. The trees are planted on temple grounds and offer shelter and shade for birds. This would make sense because this episode focuses on our protagonists resting and healing after a difficult battle. Episode 15, Mount Natagumo. We're back to the foreboding colors this episode, although I'm again not 100% sure of what this design is. It could be broken glass or a broken spider web, but given that this episode introduces the spider demon family, I'm gonna go with spider webs. Spiders in Japan don't exactly have the best reputation. One of the more common yokai in Japanese mythology is the Jorogumo, a spider demon that takes on the guise of a beautiful woman to lure in her victims. There's also an old Japanese saying, and please forgive me for my pronunciation, but it goes something like this: Asagumo wa korosu na, yorogumo wa korose. Or, in English, do not kill morning spiders, but do kill evening spiders. That is to say, spiders seen in the morning are good omens, but spiders seen at night are bad omens. Since demons in this series only come out in the dark, I would assume we should kill these spiders. Episode 16, Letting Someone Else Go First. As I mentioned before, water can be represented in many ways, and this pattern, called Seigaiha, is another form. This pattern features overlapping concentric circles representing waves and is supposed to symbolize waves of good luck. To be completely honest, I'm not sure why they went with this pattern for this episode. If you have any ideas, let me know in the comments. Episode 17, You Must Master a Single Thing. The pattern used in this episode features interlocking swastikas, a pattern known as Sayagata in Japan. Because of Hitler and the Nazis during World War II, the swastika has a negative connotation in the Western world. However, in many places, the swastika is still used as a sacred and religious symbol. In Japan, the swastika is associated with Buddhism, and, in fact, if you look at any map of Japan, Buddhist temples are usually marked with a swastika. Many cultures and religions have used a swastika throughout human history, so it has multiple meanings, but it is generally considered an auspicious symbol. In East Asian Buddhism, it represents eternity or the whole of creation. Since this episode focuses a lot on Zenitsu, I suppose this design is a reference to his name, as Zen is a Japanese sect of Buddhism. Episode 18, A Forged Bond. This pattern of interlocking hexagons is called kikko, or tortoiseshell. Because tortoises live for a very long time, this pattern is auspicious and represents longevity, endurance, and good health. This likely alludes to the very strong opponents our heroes face in this episode, as our protagonist's swords are unable to cut through the necks of either the father spider demon or Rui. Episode 19, Hinokami. We have another title card with no motif, indicating an important episode. And what an episode it was. I remember everyone was talking about it after this episode aired. Anyway, in contrast to Muzon's introductory episode, the colors here are much lighter and symbolize Tanjiro and the dance of the fire god breathing style he unlocks. Episode 20, Pretend Family. This pattern is either spider webs, tortoiseshell, or a mixture of both. I'm really not sure. Either way, we've already discussed both motifs, so we'll move on to the next episode. Episode 21, Against Core Rules. Again, we have a double motif title card representing two major characters, Shinobu and Gyu. The butterflies are a reference to Shinobu, who so obviously depicts a butterfly from her hair ornament to her haori design to the way she appears to float through the air. The symbol of the butterfly can mean many things, but the idea of a caterpillar transforming into a butterfly is most prominent, representing transformation and change. In Japan, butterflies represent the season of spring, but are also associated with death, with the belief that butterflies either are the souls of the recently departed or are there to help guide them to the afterlife. This was famously depicted in the anime and manga series Bleach. The geometric pattern in the background references Gyu, as it's the same pattern he wears on half his haori. I'm honestly not sure what it's supposed to be, or if it even has a Japanese name. The closest thing I could find was a pattern called Mikado, and even then it's not an exact match, and I was only able to find one reference to it on Google. However, according to that one website, the Mikado pattern represents strength and stability, which would suit Gyu well given his status as one of the pillars. Episode 22, Master of the Mansion. We have the Wisteria motif popping up again, referring to the Master of the Demon Slayers. Since we've discussed it at length before, I won't do it again. The basket weave pattern in the background is called kagome. Yes, like the Inuyasha character. The basket weave pattern is likely a reference to the basket Tanjiro carried Nezuko in way back in episode 2, and is similar to the container she's trapped in under the pillars. As a general symbol, the pattern is supposed to ward off evil and offer protection, which was the original purpose of Nezuko's basket. Paired with the Wisteria, it could also be a reference to how both the pillars and Nezuko protect humans from demons. Episode 23, Hashida Meeting. We again see clouds as a motif here, although this time in a more foreboding sense, as they are paired with a full moon. This ends up depicting a cloudy night sky. This represents the 12 Kizuki, or 12 moons, discussed this episode. Episode 24, Rehabilitation Training. We have a lot of motifs on this episode title card, so let's break it down one by one. We've already discussed butterflies a few episodes ago, so we'll skip that one for now. The large flowers in the bottom left corner are hydrangea blossoms. In Japan, hydrangeas are closely tied to the rainy season, which begins in June. Hydrangeas are known for their ability to bloom in different colors, depending on the acidity of the soil, so they can represent a fickle nature. This might allude to Shinobu, who swings between cheerfulness and quiet rage. Hydrangeas also symbolize close families due to the flowers that grow together in clusters, probably referencing butterfly manor as a whole. The small flowers that make up the background are plum blossoms. Plum blossoms bloom in the late winter and signal the end of the cold season and the coming of spring. They represent strength in adversity due to their ability to bloom in the cold and are therefore considered an auspicious symbol. I think this points to Tanjiro, who perseveres in his training this episode. Episode 25, Tsukugo Kanaotsuyuri. This episode focuses on best girl Kanao, so the motifs here all allude to her in some way. The cocoon and flower buds both indicate change and new beginnings, representing Kanao's new start in life with Kanae and Shinobu. The background pattern of interlocking circles is called shippo. Yes, like the Inuyasha character. And this represents the 7 jewels or treasures held by the 7 gods of fortune. These treasures are traditionally gold, silver, lapis lazuli, crystal, agate, coral, and carnelian. Shippo is considered an auspicious pattern that embodies a wish for family happiness and financial success. This fits Kanao perfectly, as money plays an important part of all stages in her life. She starts off born into a poor family, is sold by her family for money, is then bought by Kanae, who then gives her a coin to flip to help her make decisions. Episode 26, New Mission. Our finale is yet another title card without any imagery whatsoever. It's kind of an anticlimactic way to end this video, but, well, it is what it is. Congratulations if you made it to the end of this video. I'm so proud of you. I know that it was kind of long, but I hope you enjoyed it and you learned a few things. And in case you're wondering, yes, I did choose my outfit to relate to the Demon Slayer theme this video. The triangular pattern on my kimono reminds me of Zenitsu, and it's a pattern called uroko, which means fish scales, and it's supposed to offer protection to its wearer. The howdy I am wearing is an antique and features stylized pink and black Assanoja, kind of like Nezuko. And you can see it there. Because you've seen it throughout the video quite often, I won't even go through what it means. In any case, you guys totally don't have to, but I am leaving a coffee link down below. Feel free to donate. If you don't want to, you don't want. It's fine. I have a full-time job. However, it would mean a lot to me. I could upgrade some equipment. I could probably buy a screen so you don't have to look at my messy apartment. Yeah, so feel free, but don't feel obligated to. In any case, hopefully I will get some more videos out. I do want to cover Cells at Work Black when it comes out in about, I think, a week. I am a registered nurse by trade, and it's something that I've wanted to cover, and I'm looking forward to it a lot. So look out for it, and I shall see you guys at another time. Bye!